Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going through my July reading wrap-up. I ended up reading 27 books this month, so let's go through all of them and my thoughts on them. We're gonna go genre by genre, starting with fantasy. First up, we have The Enchanted Greenhouse. If you are a fan of cozy fantasy, then this one is an absolute must-read. This is the same author as The Spell Shop, but they are just interconnected standalones. So even if you haven't read The Spell Shop, you can pick this one up, and it is just so much fun. This takes place in a world where magic is outlawed, and it follows this woman who was a librarian who is super bored, and she used magic one day to create a talking spider plant to keep her company. She did end up getting caught though, and her punishment was getting turned into a stone statue as basically an example to everyone around that if you use magic, that's going to be what your future is. She's still in the statue, but she can never speak or move or get out. It's just basically a life of solitude. But in this book, she randomly wakes up alive and well on this remote island, and as she's exploring, she's finding all of these greenhouses. There's hundreds and hundreds of them. There's also a flying little cat in this book, and she's there for a purpose. There's a grumpy gardener who is not very helpful at first, but he does end up realizing she's the one that was sent to help him. The magical greenhouses are starting to die off. There are certain ones that will get cold and no longer be livable, and it's happening to more and more, and he doesn't know how to stop it because he's not the one who placed the spells on them in the first place. He's the only one left on the island, and so she is there. She's not like by any means a spellcaster or somebody who does this for a job, but she's done it once, so she's determined to look through all the notes of the person who put the spells on in the first place and get to the bottom of how to bring those greenhouses back to life and keep the currently alive greenhouses alive and well. This book is filled with talking and singing plants, again, a flying little cat, mini dragons, and it does have a romance subplot, but it is by no means a romantasy. This is cozy fantasy at its core, and it is done so well. Next up, we have Lore of the Tides, which I won't talk a ton about because this is a sequel. So this is the second book in a duology. It started with Lore of the Wilds, and I loved both of these. This one is romantasy. The small pitch I'll give for the first book is that it follows this woman who has this like enchanted library. She makes a deal with the Fae, and this one has her navigating Fae magic and looming dangers that threaten to destroy her world. It takes her on quite the journey, also into the water, which was a really fun aspect of this book. So definitely recommend this duology if you like romantasy. I just realized these next two are also romantasies, but this next one's called A Thorn in Every Heart, and this one has such a fun premise too. This one follows a woman who is trying to escape from her life. She just found her husband cheating on her with her best friend, so obviously worst nightmare. She decides to go check on her grandma because her mom's been bugging her about it. Her grandma has been seemingly going like off her rocker. She is a fantasy author, and she started to say things that are like crazy, like her fantasy world was real and she wrote it based on her own experience. So her mom thinks she's going insane, but she goes to check on her. Her grandma isn't there, but she meets this mysterious man and ends up getting taken by him into that world that her grandmother wrote about. The guy who took her thought that he was taking her grandmother because she has the ability not to age, but she wasn't using it, so she doesn't look young anymore, but they were expecting her to, so they took her thinking she was her grandmother because there's basically this curse that's in their kingdom that only her grandmother can help to lift. Now that she's there, she is wondering if she can be basically in her grandmother's place and try to help them lift the curse herself. This book was just so much fun, and it's a short little romantasy. It has these gorgeous sprayed edges too, and really cool like borders on all the pages. Definitely a fun one and a super quick read. And then lastly, it's funny because I read this one in the first half of the month and I read this one in the second half, and I barely remember this one. Like I did read it, but it kind of left my brain. But it follows a woman who has a forbidden power, and when that power is discovered, she is basically exiled. She has to leave her tiny village. So to survive, she ends up making a desperate bargain with a mercenary that is mutually beneficial to them both, and it takes her on quite the journey in this book. I do remember like little bits and pieces, but like it's almost like I read this book in a dream, and I'm like trying to piece together that dream. Like that's how hard it is for me to come up with it, and I don't know why, but I think I like this one, definitely in like the mid 3-star range. Let's go into thrillers next. I ended up having more romance than any other genre this month, which is crazy because in June I read so much romance and I was kind of burnt out on it and didn't put too many on my July TBR, and then I ended up reading the most of that anyways. I think in the summertime I just really do gravitate towards that genre. It's just such an easy breezy genre to read, and the warmth and the sunshine just gives me romance vibes. I think fall and winter are when my thriller and fantasy books come to shine. But let's go through the thrillers because I did read 7 of them this month. We'll start with We Are All Guilty Here by Karen Slaughter. If you haven't read one of her books and you like dark, gritty thrillers, then you absolutely have to. Her books are immaculate. This one takes place in a really small town on a seemingly ordinary night. It's a town that everybody thinks they know everybody. Everybody's secrets are out in the open. Our main character here, and the cop in the town, her friend's daughter disappears, and so now she is racing against time to try to track down what happened to her friend's daughter and her friend's daughter's friend. Hard to explain. But she knows she's racing against the clock because of the statistics of what happens to teenage girls, depending on how long they're missing. This one's very tense and again, dark. Her books are always very gruesome, so check trigger warnings or just check in with yourself if you like, it's not a horror book by any means, but there are no details left out in her thriller books. She bears it all. This book is also dual timeline, which I thought was really fun. And in all of her books, you get kind of a character dive on a bunch of different people, causing you to just really connect with the people that you're reading about, which she just does an amazing job. Next up, we have The Last Fairy Out. This unfortunately wasn't my favorite. I wanted to love this a lot more than I did, and I do like some of her other books. This one follows a woman who is headed to this small island. It's the island where her fiance died, and so she is there to try to find answers, to try to just get some closure. And this island has had some storms recently that caused the ferry that used to be daily to become a weekly ferry. There's not a lot of people, not a lot of traffic on this island, but she does get to know some locals that live there who did know her fiance. And she's starting to get some answers from one of them. He says that he knows some things, but before he can tell her what it is, he goes missing, of course. This does have some twists and turns in it, but I just found myself not being very gripped by the story. So those twists and turns weren't very thrilling to me because I wasn't very invested in this one. So yeah, not my favorite thriller, but I know some people are really loving this, so give it a try if the premise sounds interesting. Next up, we have Holly Jackson's new book. It's called Not Quite Dead Yet. This is her adult thriller debut. She's written a whole bunch of young adult thrillers that I've read and loved, but I was so excited to read this one, and it didn't disappoint. My only issue with this one was the ending, but the premise was just so much fun. It follows a woman who, after Halloween, she heads home for just her quiet evening. She's just there with her dog. I think she's snacking on candy or something when all of a sudden she just gets brutally attacked. She was attempted to be killed. She barely makes it out alive. She wakes up in the hospital with the doctors being like, yay, you made it, but also you are going to die within a week. You are going to have this brain aneurysm. There's nothing we can do. She could have gotten a surgery that had a 10% survival chance or something really low, and so she decided not to, and instead to spend her last week alive to try to solve her own murder, which was just such a fun and unique thriller premise. Another really fun premise was 50/50. Now, legal thrillers, before I started reading Steve Kavanaugh's books, I wasn't a huge fan of. I feel like I had read a few and they all seemed very similar. You're following the ins and outs of the case. You can usually kind of figure out where it's headed, but his books are so unique and you follow so many different people that they don't really feel like legal thrillers, even though they do center around a court case every time. This one centers around this case of this murder where two sisters are accusing each other of murdering their father. They had near identical 911 calls where they're calling in the murderers saying that each other did it. So you're on trial in this book. This is part of an interconnected standalone series. You don't have to read them in order, but the lawyer that's in all the books is representing one of the sisters, and the other sister is getting represented by a different lawyer, and you don't know yourself, the reader, who it is, who did it, and who didn't until towards the end. So it's such a fun book because you're trying to piece together yourself and try to figure it out before they do. Next up was The Safari by Jacqueline Goldis. I've read 3 of her books, and I think that might be her only 3, honestly. I think I've read all of her books, and they're all so much fun. I think this may be my favorite, or maybe tied with The Chateau. My only complaint on this one was actually just some animal deaths. This does take place in a safari in South Africa, and there's one character who's very sensitive to animals dying, and so because of that it's kind of explained because people are I guess you could say poking fun at him or saying oh, it's just natural, and it describes these animal deaths just a little bit to the point that it did bother me, but I'm just very hypersensitive to that trigger, so if you are not, then you won't find issue with this at all. This one follows a very wealthy family going on this trip. Their mother is going to be getting married for the second time, and so they're there to basically celebrate that and also just go on this family vacation. Now this one brought a bunch of people with her. It's all of her adult children, her daughter-in-law, her grandchildren, and her best friend who's also her assistant. But I think it's the very first chapter in this book, somebody finds her body, and so she is going to die. It's a murder mystery, and it's a series of murders that rock this exclusive compound that she has booked for them. Of course, it's somewhat of a remote location because it's somebody in the compound, somebody had to do it, so it's a fun whodunit. Her books are always more mysteries, they're a little bit slower burn, but I just absolutely eat them up every time. Next up, I read Her Many Faces, which wasn't my favorite thriller of the month, but I really liked the premise. I just thought that this dragged a little bit in the middle. It's about this woman who's on trial for murder, but it's told through the lens of the 5 men who know her. This is her father, her former lover, her friend, her lawyer, and a reporter, and all these people have very different opinions on her, and so it is fun to read through because each chapter that you're getting from a different person, it's almost like you're reading about a different person, so you're seeing very different sides to this woman as you're trying to get to the bottom of what actually happened. And lastly, for thrillers, we have Don't Open Your Eyes by Liv Constantine, and I loved this one. It was such a fun thriller. It follows this woman who seems to have the perfect life. She has the husband and children of her dreams, but she starts to get these weird nightmares, and she doesn't think too much of it until something that happened in her nightmare actually comes true, and she's seeing a pattern. She'll have these really bad dreams, and then some aspect of it comes true in real life, and so now she's petrified. She's dreaming up these horrible things and trying to prevent her dreams from coming true, basically switching up, like if she dreamt that her husband's getting in a car accident, then she's making him stay home longer so that she's just reading about that car accident on the news and it's not her husband that was in it. Like crazy stuff, but nobody's believing her, including her husband. He's like, this is just a coincidence. Like obviously that's a very far-fetched idea to believe in. But this one was just so tense and such a page turner that I just ate this book up. Okay, let's save romance for last because again, that stack is just intimidating to me. But I did read 5 books that I consider in just like a other category. One's poetry, one's a memoir, and then 3 are contemporary fiction. First up for poetry, we have Things I Never Got to Tell You, which was just a beautiful book of poems. These ones are poems of heartache, hope, and healing, and so many of these I tabbed because I just absolutely was touched by them and felt a lot of emotions reading them, which is always the goal. So definitely recommend this book of poetry. Then we have a contemporary fiction. This one's called the Sandy Page Bookshop. This one does have like a romance subplot in it, but it follows this woman who basically needs a fresh start on life. She had a failed career in publishing and also a failed engagement, and so she's headed back to her hometown, and she ends up deciding to transform this old sea captain's home that was a kind of staple in her community into a bookstore and cafe. She has the help of some locals, and you get to know her story, but also like some of the other locals in the town, and I just loved like the characters in this. The character development was done very well. I've read a few books by this author and this one is my new favorite. Another contemporary fiction we have is All the Words We Know. I wanted to love this so badly, but it just didn't work for me. It follows a woman who suspects there's foul play happening in the care home where she lives, and why this didn't work is this is a very short book, so you'd think it'd be easy to fly through. It's like 200 pages, but it's told through her perspective, and she has dementia, and it results in a book that's like kind of choppy because she's forgetting things and she's also like having a hard time forming the right words. And so you're reading through her struggle of that for the full 200 pages. And so it felt like I was reading like a 500 or 600 page book. And I'm very sensitive to that topic. I've had 3 grandparents pass from dementia, so this was like a book I was very excited for. I just wish that it was told through a different perspective or wasn't as repetitive as it was, because it just made it a little bit hard to read through. Next up, we have The Girl I Was by Geneva Rose, which was a phenomenal book. I've read some of her thrillers and love those, but this one was like a revamped version of her first book she ever wrote, and the story in this is just absolutely amazing. It follows this woman who is finally like at her last straw. She has had a lot of bad happen in her life, and this one day she loses her job and her relationship, and it's finally just like too much for her. She's finding solace in the bottom of a bottle, but when she wakes up, it's not the current year anymore. She wakes up 14 years in the past. It's her freshman year of college. She thinks she's there to just basically get to restart from 14 years ago, but then she actually meets her 18-year-old self, much to her dismay because they do not get along. They're very different people. They both want her to just go back to 14 years later, but they have to figure out how to do that and basically how to fix her life so that she doesn't make all these mistakes that lead her to where she was. So they're working together, they butt heads a lot, but it is just an amazing book. It's a pretty quick read through and I just ate up every page. Next up, we have a Gracie Gold's memoir, which if you are a figure skater, I highly recommend reading this, or if you're interested in the figure skating world or Gracie Gold's story. If you're not interested in any of those topics, this probably won't be for you, but I followed her every step of her way in her career and was so inspired by her story, and am even more so now after I read this memoir. The things that she has gone through and still become the amazing person that she is just so inspirational to me. I think if you're a figure skater at any point in your life, there are some aspects to this that you will relate to, and also some eye-opening things, like if you didn't get to the highest form of competition like she did, that you would have no idea happened in the skating world, which I found very interesting to read about. All right, moving on to romance. We have 11 of these, so let's get into it. We've got to start with The Atmosphere, which you probably saw in one of my last month's reading wrap-ups, but I reread this book because we're doing a podcast episode on it, and so I wanted it fresh on my mind, and I also would take any excuse to reread this book because I am obsessed with it. It's definitely my top 5 favorite books of all time. I tabbed it on my second read through. It follows a woman who is one of the first female NASA astronauts. She gets accepted into the program, and we follow her life, both present day, I want to say 1985, but also when she first got into the program a few years ago. Now, the book starts out with a bang because you are following her on a very catastrophic space mission. She's on the ground, but she's trying to figure out like how to help because some of her colleagues are up in space and they are having tons of issues. It's a very high stakes situation. And then you jump back to just like normal daily life. And so that like jump back and forth is, you'd think it's really jarring, and it kind of is, but it's done so well that it just leaves you wanting to get back to that current day timeline. But also when you dive back to her older life and you're just getting to know her, like it's just written so well that like truly I ate up every single page of this both times that I read it. I read this book physically both times, but I do plan to listen to the audiobooks. I hear that's amazing too. It is a sapphic romance book, but also just a beautiful historical fiction with a sneak peek of what it must have been like to be a woman in STEM back in the 80s and to be fighting for your spot and also trying to prove yourself every single day. Grab your tissues, you will sob when you read this. I cried both times I read it. Next up we have Let's Make a Scene, which is a kind of movie romance book. It follows a woman who is basically getting a revamp of the first movie that really took off her career. In that first movie, she had a co-star that they had amazing chemistry on set, but she didn't really get along with him off set. The company basically had them fake date to try to keep up appearances and make the press not think that they hate each other. And now that they're revamping the sequel to this movie, they're also revamping their fake relationship to, again, try to build some buzz around it and keep the PR positive. But they're of course actually gonna catch feelings, and this book was a lot of fun to read. I actually read a second movie set romance. This one's Holly Jolly July. This one was an absolute blast too. It's on the set of a Christmas movie, but it does take place in July in Canada, so it is a warm set. It's a grumpy sunshine sapphic romance between one of the actresses and the grumpy makeup artist. Now the actress thinks this is like the career of her dreams. She's so excited for this gig. She thinks it might be a great stepping stone for her. And the makeup artist thinks this is like so below her. She's hoping it can help launch her career, but she's just not happy where she's at. They both end up dating the same guy without realizing it. They think that they're exclusive with him, and so when they realize they're dating the same person, they basically pull like a Home Alone type of pranks on him, which was a lot of fun. But while they're doing that and they're working together, they also are falling for each other along the way. I thought this one was an absolute blast. I definitely recommend it. I was so sucked into this story. Then we have what I'm declaring the summer romance book of 2025. This is Till Summer Do Us Part, and the premise of this one was just such a blast. I legitimately was laughing while I was reading through this book. If you've read a Megan Quinn book, that's not like uncommon for her books, but this one was just my favorite I've ever read of hers. It follows a woman who got a new job, and her entire team are all men, and she's trying to fit in with them. They're actually all like happily married. They're super nice guys, and she ends up letting slip in the middle of a work meeting that she's also married because she's trying to relate to them. And immediately one of the guys is like, "Are you sure? Because you're not wearing a ring." And she's like, "Oh, whoops, yeah, like we're kind of separated. We're not doing well in our marriage." And so her boss is like, "Well, good news, my spouse is actually a marriage counselor. I'm gonna get you in on a free session." And she's like, great, but also inside she's like, oh shit, because she doesn't actually have a husband. So she ends up going to this counseling session with her best friend's brother. He loves to do improv, so it's a fun little project for him. But what she doesn't expect is for that counselor to also invite them on this marriage retreat that a bunch of her coworkers are going on with their spouses. And now her fake husband just immediately agrees to it, which of course causes her to panic, but she can't just like say no. So they go on this, and it's like set in a summer camp. They of course fall for each other along the way. The guy is such a golden retriever MMC. He falls first, and it's just such a cute story. I unfortunately wasn't the biggest fan of backhanded compliments. I wanted to love this one a lot more than I did. It is a rivals to lovers sapphic romance set in the tennis world, and I was ready for this to become like part of my personality because I met my spouse playing tennis, but I just thought the execution of this one was not done perfectly. It was a debut book, so I do cut some slack for that. But it had a magical realism element to it, which is basically soulmates that have like the name of your soulmate on your arm, I think it was. And I just thought it was unnecessary. It just, honestly, a strange addition that didn't really add to the plot at all. I also didn't love either of the characters. I thought they were kind of mean girl energy at times. I loved the tennis aspect though, and again, I wanted to love this one a lot more than I did. It just really wasn't my favorite. Then we have The Survivor Wants to Die at the end, which, oh my goodness, this one's a young adult romance. This is like 700 plus pages, but like it read like it was 300. I just flew through this book. If you haven't read either of the first two books, you've got to start there. But this whole series has been 5 stars for me. Like, I'd give them all 6 stars if I could. These books will rip your heart out, but also in the best of way. Like, you'll fall in love with these characters. All of them have heartbreaking elements to them, but they also will all just be so thought-provoking and make you just like take a look at yourself and the relationships that you have in your life. All 3 of them are queer romance books set in a world where there's this thing called the Death Cast that you can sign up for that will basically call you on the day that you're gonna die. So between like midnight and 3 a.m. they do all their calls, and they let you know sometime within the next 24 hours you are gonna die. They don't know how, they can't tell you that, but it gives you opportunity to live your last day however you'd like, to make new memories, maybe make new friends or spend time with the people you love, say goodbye, all of that stuff. Now this one follows a boy who really wants to die, even though he keeps not getting that call from Deathcast, but also our other main character is the son of the Deathcast empire. This book was so beautifully written, I could talk about this for hours on end. I did read 2 of Catherine Cowell's books this month. These are my first I've ever read of hers, and the first one was Chasing Shelter, and then we also have All the Missing Pieces. Now her books are fun because they are like romance, or I guess romantic suspense is what I'd say. They're almost like a mix between a romance book and a thriller. This one a little bit less so, like it had a thriller aspect to it, but this one was like half thriller at least. This one follows a woman who basically needs a fresh start in life. She's trying to escape her past. She's moving into the small town that her brother lives in. He sets her up in this new home. Turns out she's next door neighbors with one of her brother's best friends who's very protective over her immediately. He's a single dad. This is a grumpy sunshine trope. The relationships between him and his daughter, and also her and his daughter, are just so wholesome. If you like small town romance, this one's an absolute must. It's the first I've read of this series, even though I think this is book 6, but they're interconnected standalones, so I do plan to go back back and read the other 5 too. And then All the Missing Pieces follows a woman who is a true crime podcaster. She does this because she lost her sister many years ago and never found out what happened. And so she tries to bring justice for other people to be able to find closure for their loved ones or be able to solve the case herself. So she's following a new lead, she's in a new town, and there's this very broody sheriff who's kind of in her way. He's who there's going to be a romance with eventually. This case is a lot closer to home. It is going to end up connecting to what happened to her sister all those years ago, and she will end up working together with that sheriff, even though they certainly don't really get along at first, but I definitely like this one. This one was my favorite of the 2, but they're both really good. I read a super short romance novella called Roller Coaster Romance. It follows this woman who's basically the new manager of what is like Disneyland. She's trying to succeed in her new role. She's also falling for one of the other workers there. Super short read, but if you like romance, then I think this is a fun one. Next up is Plus Size Player. This one was another enjoyable romance book. It follows a woman who's always like not put all of her eggs in one basket. She likes to keep her options open. She likes to have like multiple guys that she goes out with just for fun on dates. She's like an influencer model and she likes to keep her career wide open too. She works with different brands and such, but she ends up getting like 2 opportunities land in her lap. One of the guys she's dating, she's just really falling for. He's everything she could ever want in a guy. And she's also getting this career opportunity to work with this company she absolutely loves, but it has like an exclusivity clause, so it's going to be like kind of pigeonholing her career and her love life if she goes this direction. So the question is she actually going to go for what she wants, even if it means no longer having all of her options? There's also an element that I'm not going to spoil anything, but something I didn't see coming that kind of throws a curveball in her life. But I thought this book was really fun. I've read 2 books by this author and really enjoyed them both. And last but not least, we have An Irish Summer, which was a really fun summery romance. It follows a woman who works at a bed and breakfast, and she finds out very last minute that her bed and breakfast is closing down. And so she's freaking out. She thought she had her life kind of figured out. She's been working there for forever, and they give her the opportunity to go work for just the summer at their sister bed and breakfast in Ireland, which she begrudgingly takes. She lives in Boston and she wants to end up in Boston, but she decides to just go there for the summer. She needs to work somewhere. So she goes there not wanting to love it, but what happens is she ends up falling in love with not only the country, but also the people that live there. She's making new connections with some coworkers and ends up falling in love along the way. So it's definitely like a found family trope. And I love the Ireland vibes. It definitely made me want to travel there soon. All right, that was all of them. I had an amazing reading month in the month of July. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them in the comments. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.